What happens when the chaos you grew up in quietly becomes the blueprint for every relationship you try to build? Raised in a home shaped by generational trauma, addiction, and emotional abuse, Dan Snyder entered adulthood carrying shame, loneliness, and no real model for love. After addiction, divorce, and years of confronting his own patterns, he chose an unexpected path, helping couples rebuild intimacy. What he discovered about healing broken relationships may challenge everything we think we know about love. Now, before we begin, if you're here because you're seeking truth, understanding, and a deeper relationship with your own life, make sure to subscribe and share this episode with someone who may be in a moment where things feel unsettled inside. Every conversation here is meant to offer perspective, support awareness, and remind you you're not alone. Welcome, Dan. Thank you so much for being here.
Yeah, thank you, Caroline, for having this space available for me and for lots of other people to
Yeah.
really share.
Absolutely. Yeah. That's the thing is I think we need to share more than isolate. So that's part of why this exists. So, can you go a little deeper into what you've lived through and how that experience shaped the work or perspective that you bring into the world today?
Yeah, absolutely. And like all things in life, it's not all or nothing, black and white. So, alongside some of the really difficult experiences I had growing up, there were also really wonderful moments, and we're a mix of all of that, light and dark. And so, a few of the important things from my story early on was that I was raised in a two-parent household in a really comfortable, suburban setting, had all my physical needs taken care of, and many of my emotional needs were taken care of too, alongside things that were not so good. And so, yeah, we're all a mix of that. A key part of my childhood was, a lot of unpredictability. So there was quite a bit of chaos in my household, and some days it was very hot, angry energy. Things could be thrown, voices could be raised. And then other days it was more cold and quiet and more like silent treatment and kind of everybody to their corner. So being a kid in that environment, trying to figure out how to survive and, what to make of all of that, I really learned avoidance as a strategy and making myself, either small or farther away, or trying to do everything right, trying to control my environment as best as I could. And, those were things that make sense that I learned. And they served me kind of well in getting through those years, which is what I needed to do. And then, yeah, in later relationships and situations, those things were really harmful for me to build closeness, to build intimacy with other people. And I've been working on it for a long time. So we can zoom in on that stuff, and there's plenty in my adult life that's happened since we can talk through also.
Sure, I totally get it. I think there's a couple of things I'd like for you to kind of go a little bit deeper into.
Mhm.
Because I've had a lot of people and I didn't have well, I probably did with my mother, but I didn't when I lived with my dad and my grandmother and I don't remember unpredictability, but definitely with my mother. So for many people, there's that feeling of unpredictability and like trying just to and as a child we don't know how to do this stuff, right? We're not trained to do it. We're expecting the people who are doing this to us, so to speak, to
Mhm.
teach us not to do this. Right? So can you give some suggestions or other thoughts on this how to maneuver the unpredictability, because a lot of people, especially now in the world where there's a lot of unpredictability,
Mhm.
don't know how to maneuver this. Can you kinda go in a little bit deeper into that piece of it?
Yeah, it's such a important thing to talk about because, change is the only real constant, right? So, like, everything is changing all around us.
Yeah.
And, predictability feels like safety a lot of the time,
Mhm.
unless you grow up or learn, in these unpredictable environments, and then chaos feels like the normal, and you kind of chase unpredictability and chaos because that's what you've grown used to. So we see this in people with similar kinds of childhoods like mine, but even in adult life, living through war or political instability or other types of trauma, soldiers, all kinds of different settings, we can adapt and get used to chaos and unpredictability and think that that's the norm. And so that is a lot of what happened to me, and that is part of what led me into depression at different points in time, or addiction, and seeking stimulation and chaos to kind of match what my nervous system had learned to grow accustomed to.
Mhm.
Um, and there's things that we can do to work on that, things that, I practice every day now, things that I work with my clients and the couples that are in relationships where things are unpredictable, for how to have really an internal sense of predictability. We can't still control what's happening outside of our body. We can have some influence over it, where we choose to be, who we choose to be with, but it starts with managing our own internal sense of predictability, consistency, and safety.
Mhm.
And so, yeah, the ways that I kind of taught myself how to do that as a kid didn't serve me very well. And so I've developed different ways for how to create safety and stability within myself. And that has ripple effects. All of a sudden my relationships look different. The people I spend time
Yeah.
with are different, and kind of everything else adjusts once you have that internal sense.
Right. And you just reminded me of something that makes a lot of sense to me because one of the things that I learned a long time ago, because I was the person who always felt out of control. So, of course, I would try to control every little minute detail in my environment.
Hmm.
And when I learned about this, and I'm sure you know what this is, but like when you're traumatized and you don't know how to deal with things, you want to control your environment so you feel safe, right? So there's this thing called a locus of control, where that locus of control basically is you put your arms, I don't know if you can see this, but you put your arms out as to the width of your arms and you turn around in a circle, and that's basically your locus of control. That's what you have control over in your life. And when we try to control anything beyond that or do something about something that we really don't have control over, that will cause depression and anxiety and all kinds of things, right?
Mm.
So yeah, that was a huge, huge deal for me when I finally understood that. Because we always most people think who've been traumatized that there's something wrong with us, that we're broken, or or we're not good enough, or whatever. And then when there's finally an aha moment,
Hmm.
it's like, oh, okay, so I'm normal. Whatever that means. I don't even know what that means. So can you, before we get in, I have a few questions that are specific, but can you go into a couple of the things that you do? Like for me, it's mindfulness, or, a version of meditation because I've never really been good at it, or walking or being in nature. What kinds of things did you do to get yourself out of that whole perfectionist, avoidance stuff that you
Hmm.
were doing in your life as you were growing up?
Yeah, yeah. No, a big question and an important one. So, I also want people to know, before I talk too much more, that at my website at intimacyshift.com, I have a tool that is, a free, for anyone that visits the site, that I want people to have, because it includes a lot of information that I'm going to talk about for my practices, but also how I teach couples in particular how to regulate on their own with each other, and then to have the kinds of conversations that lead to conflicts, and we don't want them to lead to conflicts anymore. So there's a
Right.
way to regulate yourself and yourself with another person so that you can talk through all the things and relationships that you need to.
Yeah, that's good.
Yeah,
And
yeah, and so some of the things that I use and that I teach others to use too. So, yeah, you mentioned mindfulness, which is a, big buzzword. There's lots of different ways to approach mindfulness. And I'm a strong advocate for finding the right way for you to get into mindfulness because the most effective practice is the one that you are actually going to do. So if you have tried, you know, walking in meditation and you're like, I don't like this, I'm distracted, I prefer to sit, quietly at home, great, do that. The most effective one is the one we actually sit down and do. So for me, I some days have different, you know, feelings in my body, and some days I need to move and I get outside and I take a walk, I listen to the birds, and then I'm getting regulated in a few different ways because I'm getting fresh air and sunlight. My ears are getting that bird song, which is kind of amazing. It's one of those science studies that we didn't really need, but it's helpful to have that, bird song is at a different frequency and it helps us to feel safe because birds don't sing when there's danger around. So it's like really wired in for our human history. And some days, I'm at home, lower energy, and it's quiet, and I'm really getting deeply into my breath. I'll do different kinds of length of time, breathing in, breathing out, just to give my mind something to focus on. Because if I'm not focused on doing something with my breath, I'm going to get distracted with other sorts of thoughts that uh, I don't want in that particular moment. So I do have a mindfulness practice around breath in a few different ways.
let me, before you go further, for those people who have never actually done breath work, when you say length of time, can you explain what you mean by length of time?
Yeah, so people know what shallow breathing, what hyperventilated breathing is. We don't realize that we're doing it a lot of the day or a lot of the time until we actually stop and take a big, full, deep inhale, filling our belly, filling our chest, and having a nice, long, audible exhale. When we pause and do that, we realize, wow, I haven't taken a full deep breath, maybe all day. So there's different kinds of ways you can play with making the inhale long, making the exhale long, doing a certain number of seconds on the inhale or the exhale. But really, like the main thing is taking that full deep breath and having a longer, slower exhale. And that's a signal for your body that you're safe and calm. You don't have to run from danger. You're able to pause and it regulates your nervous system in a really great way.
Yeah. Yeah. That's perfect. Okay. So let's get into the relationship piece of it because
Mhm,
that's what you do.
mhm,
So we all know that communication in relationships is important, or at least most of us know that. But what are some practical and actionable tools that people can use today to build emotional intimacy in their communication with a partner?
mhm. Yeah, well, so I'll add to what you just said. So we all know it, and often we either blame the other person, like, "I'm doing it, but you're not," right? Or they're doing something, and so we can't communicate. And so the first thing that I go to with communication is starting with eye language. It's another one of these things that makes sense once you hear it. Um, but until you are very conscious of it, working to practice it every day, it doesn't come totally naturally. And so when we're approaching any kind of communication or conversation with you statements, it is perceived as an attack, as a criticism, right? You always do this, you never do that. And when we come with I language, it doesn't provoke defensiveness in the other person,
Mhm,
right? It's
mhm.
hard to argue. Like if I'm expressing, I'm feeling sad today because this thing happened, right? The other person's not likely to feel attacked by that or like they need to challenge it. And so it's a different way into these emotional conversations with another person. Just like a quick example, in a lot of the couples that I work with, time is such this scarce resource, right? We have very limited amount of time with our partner. And in that time together, we may be tired, stressed, hungry, have to communicate a lot of different things. And in these brief interactions, we get ourselves into trouble because we say things without really thinking about it. And so I'll have couples that have some version of, they don't see each other all day. They're together in the house now, and it's, hey, you forgot to do this. Or, oh, you always leave, this on the table, right? Or you never put that away. Yeah, and so we haven't seen each other all day, and that's the first thing that gets said. And, from there, one person's feelings are going to be hurt. They may lash back out, and we tumble into the rest of the night feeling disconnected, feeling like we're not on the same team, and kind of blaming the other person in our head. So, yeah, the first thing that I always want to go to is eye language. So instead of having that interaction, you could have something more like, I love when, I get home and I get to put my things down and we have some time together.
Mhm.
Totally different energy. You can still put out there if something needs to happen. And I realize that there's things that we have to get done here at the house tonight. And, I'm looking forward to, getting those things done, or I'm looking forward to
Mhm.
us figuring out how to, knock these things out at the house. So it's eye language, and then like, how can we collaborate? Totally different energy.
Yeah. And what I find interesting about eye language is, and I know about it, so I want to just clarify this so others can understand that
Mhm.
it's not just the doing that by saying that stuff. There's an additional piece that happens there, and you can go. I want you to go more into it, but I'm just going to bring it out. So one of the things that happens when we do eye language is that we're taking responsibility for our feelings about something. We're not, like, pushing it off on someone else, like you were saying, "Oh, I came home and the garbage wasn't taken out." You didn't take the garbage out. Or how about, "I'm tired, um, I," or some just you can go into that part. Anyway, but it's taking that responsibility by saying, "I'm not blaming this other person, I'm just sharing how I feel, and that way they know how I feel, not that I'm blaming them," right? And then the piece that tags along with that is empathy, because when we use eye language, the other person's empathy shows up because they understand their bodily and mentally and emotionally. There's an understanding of the feeling, like, I feel sad because, or I feel sad when, or whatever. And then the other person has an opportunity to empathize rather than put their barriers up and create that um conflict or whatever is going to happen. Can you get a little bit more in deeper into that piece of it?
Yeah, of course I can. Yeah. And, at a basic level, all of us want to feel seen and cared for and understood. And when we use eye language, we allow for that possibility. Um, you talked about, or we both talked about, control before. I think about, yeah, control versus influence. So, you language is very much trying to control the other person. You're trying to get them to see things your way or to do something. I language is more about influence. It's softer and it's more about bringing that person in. Because when we're in relationship, we are connected. The things that I do affect you and vice versa. And so by using that I language, it's a way of connecting, it's sharing, it is putting yourself out there. And so there's an opportunity, but it's also a setup for hurt. When we've been stuck in these patterns and the other person may not be expressing empathy, we start to share our feelings a whole lot less. So I do understand how that happens and why people are reluctant to share their feelings or to be open when they've been shut down or rejected for so long. But in other relationships that there hasn't been kind of quite so much hurt, and we're in a different place, it's an opportunity for the other person to listen, to care about those feelings, and to show up. And then in turn, the other person's going to be more willing and likely to hear your feelings. And then we can have this beautiful connection. We can be on the same team instead of battling against each other. And when it happens, it's really lovely. And there's ways to have this happen. And I know that it is not an easy thing. It sounds simple when we talk about it, but I know that it does take quite a lot of work. And one area that does take work for many of the couples is just knowing, like, oh, there's more than three or four different kinds of feelings, and knowing what different feelings are like in my body and practice using them, saying them out
Mm,
loud.
mhm.
So
That's
rather
a challenge
than
for empaths, by the way, just saying.
yeah, well let's talk more
Oh,
about
no.
it. But I'm a strong advocate for, like, let's get more feelings
Yeah,
out there. Happy, mad, frustrated, sad
yeah,
are
yeah.
fine, but they're
Mhm.
not the same as feeling lonely or feeling stressed or feeling joyful or silly. Right? There's a lot of other feelings, and we're not expressing them and not noticing what those nuances are like in our body.
It's not easy to notice those nuances when you're just especially when you're just getting started and all you know is shut down and frozen and numb and all that kind of thing. There's no nuance. There's just nothing, and I've been there and I get that and I'm sure you've been there as well and it's like that is not an easy place to be. But when you make the choice and you start to like I remember I was in a I don't even remember when this was anymore. It was maybe 4 years ago or something. I would literally touch my body as I'm working through my own stuff trying to figure this out, and I couldn't even feel my own body. Like, it was so numb, I couldn't feel my own body from all the stuff that I had gone through over the years, over 35
Yeah.
years, and it just got to a point, and I'm like, "Alright, that's it. Keep touching myself, keep hugging myself, let's get used to doing this," because we get so numb, we can't feel our feelings, and then for some people, there's an underlying, programming. Don't feel your feelings, so if you got both of them going on, there's no human left. You're just a numb, you know, s something in a skin suit, whatever that something is, I don't know. But
Yeah.
now with relationships, this is a big deal to me because since I've been through the relationships that I've been in, the partnership type of relationships and even friendship relationships, I have come to understand this piece about growth. Like being in a relationship is not about loving and la la and all this stuff forever and ever. Amen. That's not what it's about that I've learned. It's about growth and it's about gratitude. And there's lots of growth. And if you're open to the growth, to me, it's not going to be as painful. Now, I'm not in a relationship right now because I'm still growing in my own space. And I've also found out that you kind of grow exponentially when you're in a relationship. So these are your personal values. You've mentioned this before to me as growth and gratitude. So, how did you come to those values and how do they show up in the work that you do?
Yeah. Yeah. So, despite struggling with depression and addiction and lashing out, and I talked a little bit about things that I grew up, surrounded by, I am fundamentally an optimistic person. I've over many years, decided, my options are either to give up and be alone, feel not good enough and rejected, forever, or I can keep trying, keep working on myself, keep putting myself out there, and believing, hoping that I will be connected to other people, that I will have safety and security in my relationships, and that I am lovable. And sometimes that's harder to believe than other times. And
You are
uh,
lovable.
well, thank you.
I
Thank
am
you.
lovable. Just
You
say it.
are too.
All of you
Yes.
are lovable. Yes. Thank you for bringing
Daily
that.
reminder. No, that's so important. Thank you.
Yeah,
Thank you.
sure.
Truly. Yeah. And so doing a values exercise, which I recommend to everybody to do, it doesn't take super long. This is an exercise I got from Dr. Brene Brown in one of her books, but you can Google, list of values. There's hundreds. I mean, and you take the list and you go through it and you start crossing things off that don't quite fit, circling things that resonate for you, and whittling the list down and down and down until you have one or two, three at most values that are core to who you are and who you want to be, and doing a quick written reflection about why those values and what they mean to you. And it is incredibly powerful and clarifying, just like zeroing in on exactly what your emotions are instead of like, oh, I feel fine. There's value in knowing exactly what the feeling is for your values.
Yeah. Can I
Yeah,
stop you for a second? You
sure.
said I feel fine. Do you
Yeah, I
you
feel
do know the acronym for fine, right?
I do, but please tell
Uh,
us.
oh, well, the one I know, and I'm not going to use the word, but effed up, insecure, neurotic, and eccentric.
Yeah.
Is
Yeah.
that the one you know?
Pretty close. Yeah.
Close. Okay.
Yeah,
Okay. Yeah.
exactly. So
So you're not fine.
no, no, exactly. You're like, things are okay, or I'm good. They're all
Okay.
cause yeah, they're not real feelings, and like when we ask people about their values, it's a question that we don't pause to consider always. And so this exercise is incredibly helpful. And growth and gratitude are my personal values, because I, again, want to believe in my own and other people's growth, that change is possible, and that the feelings that we deserve and want, are out there. So I firmly believe that. And gratitude is another way, a different way in for locking that in and being appreciative and present for all that we have. And doesn't have to be, big things. It can be like everyday moments of gratitude, grateful for, my legs that allow me to walk from place to place. Grateful for
We're
this deep breath I just took.
breathing.
Hmm.
There's the
Absolutely.
I'm breathing. I can't figure out how to breathe. I'm still breathing.
Hmm.
Yeah, perfect.
Yeah.
I love that. I love that.
Yeah, so I bring that into all the work that I do. Every session that I do starts with a gratitude practice. So if I'm working with a
Mm,
couple, my warm up, activity for every session is, let's think on the last couple days and express a time when we felt grateful for our partner or connected to them, and share it out loud together, and uh, our sessions are not just focused on what's going wrong, all the hurt spots and all the conflict. If that's all we focus on, then we're going to feel upset all the time too. We have to build on the good things and call
mhm.
them out and notice them.
Yeah, and most of us, even we could have a million good things going on, but when that one bad thing shows up, like, total focus on the bad. We
Hmm.
forget about all the good stuff. So the gratitude is perfect because it reminds you that there are more good things that actually happen in your life and your relationships and all that kind of stuff. So
Yeah. No,
yeah.
it's a muscle that needs strengthening for sure. I
Yeah.
forget, I forget the exact details, but there have been different studies that have replicated this, where you can change a person's circumstances. You can improve how much money they're making, where they live. You can notice these things improving, and people will maintain the same level of happy, sad, right? Satisfaction or dissatisfaction, because
Mhm.
we adjust. It's part of our survival wiring. We're always looking for danger or instability so
Yeah.
that we can survive. And
Yeah.
so no matter what the circumstances are, humans can find things to be dissatisfied and unhappy about,
Mhm.
by default. And so we have to strengthen this muscle to actively look for the good things, to look for the gratitude, because that part of our brain is more towards the front of our brain. It's more of uh, like a bonus than like a
Mhm.
survival tool.
Yeah.
And so we strengthen that element by doing these kinds of practices actively every day. So I encourage
Yeah.
anybody listening, reach out, phone, text message, say it to your partner when you get home, but find something that you are grateful for about them, something you appreciate, and express it. They will
Mhm.
feel good and you will feel good too.
Yeah, for sure. And I think what you're talking about, because I've learned this in a lot of different ways. It's not just, with this type of thing, but it's some kind of a baseline. Um set point or whatever that when we and we can move the set point. It's just that we need to or we get to do practices like you're talking about. Like for example, people who have a set point with money, with say like my set point was $1,000. I had $1,000 in the bank and I lived on $1,000 in the bank for years, like 4 or 5 years at a certain point. And then finally, as things started shifting, my set point moved and now I started attracting more. But the thing with people who are in that low set point, even people who win the lottery, they that's why they lose the money is because they have that set point, and then they get all this money and they're not used to it and their body's not used to it, and so they've got to figure out a way to get back to their set point. And this is all unconscious, subconscious, whatever happening. So I think that that set point or baseline or whatever, I think it equates to everything in our life, and I think it's based off of our habits, our programming or whatever. Would you say that's right?
Yeah, absolutely. Again, that issue of influence and control, right? So,
Mhm,
um, yeah, a lot of the easy example is money, right? And that's a focus for many people is with more money, I will feel better, and whatever way that means for you. But, internally, if we're not feeling grateful for what we have, more money is not going to change that part of our happiness.
mhm.
And
Yeah.
we are going to replace one stressor for another. And it can be similar to an addiction, right? Addiction is a disease of connection, right? Or a disease of disconnection. And so we're chasing something, we're chasing a feeling, and it's not in the addiction part, right? So if we're hyper focused on money, like money does help as a tool in many ways. Like, don't get me wrong, like more money, you can, have more things, more freedom, like there's good associated with it. But if what you're chasing is feeling like I am good enough, right? Or I'm able to provide in a certain way. That's not going to come exactly just with the money. There's also this
Mhm,
internal work to be done. And same thing in relationships. If we're looking to the other person to do the changing, right? If only they said or did this thing differently, then I would feel better.
mhm,
Um, that's not going to work because it puts,
mm-mm.
you and the other person separate from each other, and it takes away kind of your own journey, your own ability to create the circumstances that you want to be in.
Yeah, yeah, and it basically it means that it's not what you're missing, what you keep missing is not even outside of you, so that's why you can't ever grasp it.
Mhm.
You always lose that grasp. It's something inside that you're missing about how you feel about yourself. And
Mhm.
if you're in lack within your own self, feeling like you have nothing, I have no one, I have nothing, then that's what's going to show up in your life. So it's like the missing something piece is not out there, it's inside.
Yes.
So I'm going to go into something. You've got a program that you were talking about when we met called the intimacy shift. Tell me about some common intimacy shifts, or what is an intimacy in that intimacy? What is the intimate in I'm not going to get this one. The
Yeah, that's
intimacy
okay.
shift and common shifts. I'm not even going to use the word again. You or your clients have experienced, and why that's such an important issue to address in relationship.
Yeah. So I love, the feeling of being in intimate connection with another person. Everybody knows what that's like, and if not, I'm sure you are working towards it or wanting more of that. But both physical intimacy and emotional intimacy, that sense of closeness with another person, where you can be yourself, feel loved, there's physical connection and vulnerability, and it's just the best when it happens. And when we're in relationships, that feeling can be fleeting or cannot be present. And it's like all feelings, right, goes up and down over time and over situations. So the longer we're in relationship with someone, the the more different relationships we have just with that one person, because we are growing and changing over. And so in my adult life, I met someone, fell in love, and we kind of did the whole thing, moving in together, having kids, getting married. And that relationship, changed several different times in the years that we were together. We're, since then separated, divorced, and now we co-parent and are, working on that kind of friendship on the other side of all the other things. But that's where intimacy shift comes from. That's where I named the program
Mm,
because
okay.
so many people are reaching out to me because we just had our first kid. Things are different. Now we have two or three kids. Things are different. Now kids have left the house. Things are different. People move. We've changed jobs. There's grief or loss in the family. All of these different
Life
situations have caused.
transitions,
Yeah,
right? Is that what you're
exactly.
talking about? Okay.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. All these things happen, and what they're really reaching out for is, our intimacy was affected by all of this.
Yeah.
And that's the word that I hear over and over, and the feeling that people are describing. So it's not just, we're stressed. It's really like we don't feel in connection to each other. Our
Mhm.
walls are up. Or we're not talking about our feelings in the same way that we used to, or everything becomes a trigger. And so this program that I developed, it's got, 12 parts to it. Each week, each module has a different, learning element, different warm up exercise, different, tools that we're practicing to help couples with all the things that we've talked about today, learning more about their, attachment style, learning mindfulness
Yeah.
practices, ways to communicate with each other. I mean, there's so much that goes into it, but yeah, I figured out how to put it all into 12 parts to take couples from a place of conflict and disconnection to building or rebuilding a healthy, intimate connection.
Nice, nice. That sounds really interesting. So hopefully, our audience will take an opportunity and go check that out
Hmm.
and see what that's about. Because I could have used that years ago. I think I figured most of it out by now, to a point.
Yeah,
But,
yeah.
yeah, so that'll be available on your website, but we'll get into that in a minute.
Yeah, yeah, it absolutely will,
Yeah,
and it's a mix. I like that, I was able to design this program in my own way because, a lot of people who have been in individual counseling or couples counseling, will say that, we as a couple, right, like, we had the same argument we had at home, just this time it was in front of another person, but we still didn't know how to do things differently, right? We just kinda talked about our problems. And
yeah.
so in the intimacy shift program that I have, it's more exercises and skill building than it is, talking about the problems. Because people
Mm,
need to know, how do I learn this? How do I do it differently? Especially in the moment when, I'm triggered or I'm upset. And so I mentioned before about gratitude, like building that muscle. And this is the same thing,
same
for
thing.
couples
Yeah.
that have an underdeveloped, ability or muscle for connection, for emotional vulnerability. We have to practice and we have to learn ways to do it. And especially the men out there, I'll raise my hand for sure. These things were, not things that I learned in my household growing up or as just a man in the world. This wasn't the kind of gym that I was thinking about to build my muscles.
Mhm. Wrong, Jim. Well, now get into because I remember we talked about that, and that was interesting. Like, as a man, let's talk about feelings as a man. So,
Hmm.
talk directly to well, talk to everybody because women really would be good to understand what this is. And I've talked to other men who we've had similar conversations with this part of it because women, it's hard for us to understand because men, a lot of us, I can't generalize, but a lot of us, because men tend to shut down because a lot of times they don't know how to express their feelings. And women know how to express their feelings, but sometimes we express for our partners because we don't know how to get them to express. So if you could cover like help the women
Yeah, yeah.
here and then share something with the men to help them recognize that they're human and that it's okay to express their feelings. If you could do some
Mhm.
of that, that would be great.
Yeah. Well, and the majority of the couples that reach out to me, majority is a female partner on behalf of the relationship or on behalf of their male partner. And so
Yeah.
women are generally more willing to recognize a problem, to talk about it, to seek out resources. So that is a thing. We can generalize it, but that's true in my experience, and in this work for a long time. And yeah, we as a gender, right, men have been overmatched, right? Like when kids are growing up, there are different skills that are reinforced and practiced. And we know this. This has been observed, studied, researched. Boys as babies are treated differently than girls as babies. And true growing up, boys are comforted with less warmth. They are encouraged to do more things independently, to push down more of their feelings. Less kinds of sad, crying, needing reassurance behaviors are uh, preferred, and so that translates. And then, in male female relationships, right, we find ourselves in a relationship with the other person, or a different gender, and the expectations are that things are going to look a different kind of way than what we've been trained or brought up to believe. So it's not that men can't do it, it's that, that muscle is underdeveloped. And that was certainly the case for me too. I was absolutely the person that I've been talking about, like, how are you? I'm fine. I'm good. Let's move on.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. There was a wall up for
Yeah.
sure. And I didn't realize, that by being more in touch with my feelings, I would feel better. The relationship would go better, and I was actually closed off to something that could be very helpful to me. So the main message I want to send out there to the men who are listening is that there is a better way to feel, and it does take some practice. And to the women listening that want to engage their men in more of this work, I have found the best way to engage men is by telling them, like, we are going to practice specific skills. I don't just expect you to come into the session and be able to do it, or it's going to be quiet until you come up with some kind of answer. We have tools and ways to build
No.
this muscle. Right? It's scary. You're
It is.
asking me to come in here and do something I don't know how to do. And I want everyone listening to know, like, there's building blocks. One of
Mhm.
my favorite tools that I use, very early on in my program is the feelings wheel. Again, you can Google it. There's great images. So it's a feelings wheel, and it's quite literally a visual wheel with, you know, mm, the one I use has, I think, 70 or 75 different feelings on it, and they're categorized. So under sad, you'll have, lonely, rejected. And you'll have, 10 or 20 different feelings that are like sad, but not exactly the same. And so it's like having a word bank. If you're doing homework, you need a word bank because I don't know the words. I'm trying to learn them. And so I encourage couples to use this list of feelings in order to help, get better at this skill. And so I love it when I'm in sessions with clients and they'll say, Dan, I need help. Put up the feelings wheel so that I can practice, because I don't know what I'm feeling until I see the options. That's how we learn.
They use feelings wheels and feelings sheets and stuff like that with kids now in kindergarten. So maybe they should have done that when we were younger, so we don't have to
Yeah.
try and figure that out now, right?
Yeah, and
Very
keep it up past kindergarten too.
yeah.
That's like a whole other. So I spent about 10 years as a school social worker before
Mm,
getting into private practice. So that's a whole other conversation about how
yeah.
schools teach social and emotional skills, earlier, and then it trails off, and there's a
Mhm.
different focus in school. But yeah, in kindergarten, we work on these things, and it kind of stops as kids get older.
Well, and I was gonna say something about this because as humans, we are set up to create habits. right? And habits are created, what do they say? Within 21 days, you can create a habit. If you do something long enough, you can create this habit, right?
Mhm.
It's been going on since we were born. Somebody throws this thing, this continuous thing at us, and then we keep doing it and doing it and doing it. It's there, right? So I was going to mention like anything that we do that is repetitive will create a habit. But when we create these habits in childhood, these are things that are going to stay with us. So I get the feeling that's just, it just feels different to me. Like they never taught us when I was growing up in school any of this stuff with feelings. So I was always like mixing I'm an empath. So I mixed everybody else's feelings up with mine. I didn't know my feelings. All my feelings were mixed up together. Like with men, I recognized there was always this shanger feeling, which is a
Mm.
mixed up of shame and anger. With me, it was like sadness and anger. So I don't know if that's sanger, whatever. But it was always mixed up back for my generation and
Mm.
your generation. But the
Mm.
kids now, if they're training them, or since they're training them with these feelings, that should become a habit for them because it's a repetitive thing. Like every day, if they're going through something, I was friends with someone whose daughter, um, I knew them at a time when she was like between 6 and 10, and as she got older and she could start to recognize the feelings that she was having, she had a sheet that I used on her wall.
Mm.
And whenever she was going through something, I'm like, with the different faces and the names underneath it. And I'm like, point to the feeling, and she
Mhm.
would point and she just got used to it. And then at a certain point, it was like, well, how are you feeling? And she could name it,
Mhm.
and I think that's really amazing how our psyches and our minds and our bodies can connect together to understand this and create that habit once it's there you know and those of us who are trying to create relationships in a different way are uncreating these habits and creating new ones like you were talking about, and redoing this repetition to create a new habit. So there's that too, so that's fun. Anyway, did you have anything else you wanted to finish off with? I've got some questions I ask all my guests once we're done, and let me know when you're ready.
Yeah, let's jump into it.
Let's
All right.
jump it. Okay, so what is one thing you would offer someone who knows something isn't right in their life and doesn't know what to do next?
Ooh, okay. Uh, I have a bunch of different ideas. I don't know if you're looking for one thing, but I start
One
with
or two things is fine.
yeah, I start with taking a deep breath, and if reaching out to a friend is possible, reaching out to someone. If not, writing it down.
Mm,
But getting those thoughts, feelings expressed out of your head somewhere else.
exactly. I know that one. That's very true. How would you define awakening?
I would define awakening as being more aware than you were before.
Beautiful. And awareness is a big deal. Instead of going blindly, I think, through life. That's challenging. Thank you. What do you believe soul divinity is?
Mm. Well, that comes back to me being an optimist, right? Like believing that at our core, right, we are capable of growth, and that is our soul, right? That energy, I can't explain how we're all here having this wild experience. We can call it soul, we can call it
Right.
something else, but what I believe in here with soul divinity is that spark that gives us life, gives us consciousness, that it's good and that it has capacity for connection, uh, all of that.
Nice. Nice. Okay. Back to this question. How can people get in touch with you?
Yeah. So my website, intimacyshift.com, has a number of different resources, but when you visit that landing page, you'll leave your email and you can get that 12-page PDF guide that I mentioned earlier, which has the exact progression of skills and techniques to have a conversation with your partner that feels more intimate, more emotionally connected. And if you like what you read there, there's other ways to work with me also.
Okay, and can you get in just real quick, like, some of the other things that you do besides that
Yeah,
work?
so I have, like we talked about, the Intimacy Shift program, which is 12 parts and is available to anybody living anywhere. It's all online. To work with me individually as like a one-on-one client for you or for your relationship. I am a licensed clinical social worker, and my license is active in North Carolina, where I live, in Florida, Colorado, and Illinois, places that I used to live, and I maintain an active license there. So anybody in those four states is welcome to reach out to me to set up individual or couples counseling.
Hey, perfect. Thanks for sharing that. Is there anything else you'd like to share with the audience before we wrap?
I just very much appreciate the opportunity to be in your ears for this amount of time and to share parts of my story and parts of my learning. I'm another human being. This is, my area of specialty, but I am also figuring things out just like everybody else out.
Mhm, and I have to say something about that because I have met therapists who don't do their own work, and it's very challenging to be a client for a therapist that does not do their own work. So I honor the fact that you are doing your own work because how else are you going to be able to work with your clients if you don't know what they're going through? Just saying, it's a thought, right?
You're
Okay.
here. Yes.
So, Dan, thank you for sharing your journey with us today. You've reminded us that the patterns that we inherit don't have to be the patterns that we live by, and that even the deepest wounds around love can become the ground for something more honest and connected. And to our audience, may this conversation remind you that change in relationship often begins within. Thank you for being here on Awakening Soul Divinity.
Thank you for being here. Click on one of the videos below to keep going on your healing journey. And don't forget to subscribe.